Hey guys, hope you're doing well. Back just as an airplane goes overhead. Um, Hope you're doing well. This is sort of a thread response kind of video. I saw a channel that I've recently discovered called Black Beans and Rice, and I'm really enjoying his videos at the moment. And he did a really simple idea for a video, which was to show some albums of bands that you've seen live. And I really like the idea of doing this video because I'm not necessarily talking about the music or describing the music or why I like the album. I'm just talking about some experiences that aren't necessarily vinyl related, but I also have an excuse to show some records off. So I also saw James Griffiths did a similar video. I think he showed 10. I sort of went a little bit crazy, and I've got about 15 here. And when I first thought about it, I was like, oh, there's not that many in the collection. But actually, there was 30 or 40 I could have picked out. So I've sort of picked 15 ones that are a bit more unusual or a bit strange or unlikely that I've seen, because I thought that'd be a bit more interesting. And I've picked some ones that have got some little stories behind them, stuff like that. I do go out a lot to see bands live here in New Zealand. I was talking to Tali about it. On average, it's every 2 weeks. Sometimes there's been periods where I've gone out every weekend in a row to see a band play. And these are all mainly local bands. 90%, 80% of the time, it's a local band playing here that I just like to go out, catch up with a couple of mates, and just see live music. So they aren't necessarily bands that release stuff on vinyl or have digital releases, or some haven't got anything out at all. But a couple of my mates I hang out with really enjoy going out to live gigs, so we do that quite a lot. Sometimes it's every 3 weeks, but I've been out quite a bit this year. Where I live, there isn't really any local international artists come down that much anymore. I am going to go see Warpaint at the end of the month, which is kind of exciting because I'm quite a big fan of that band. But most of these I've seen in Melbourne, apart from about 3 or 4. So yeah, we'll get into it. I'll try and talk. This one hasn't really got a story behind it, but I just thought it was a very cool sort of once in a lifetime thing. I saw Vista Social Club. That was within the first week of moving to Melbourne. I saw the Pixies, and that was when they first reformed about 6 or 7 years ago. And then we saw Vista Social Club, which is really cool. Really awesome to hear that stuff live. Obviously, there was only a couple of original members left. But yeah, that was a really fun show, and definitely one of those artists that, well, from this part of the world, you won't see very often. This was an international artist I was very lucky to see last year, and I couldn't actually believe he was even playing here in Wellington. Peter Brötzmann, amazing free jazz, obviously absolute legend. This is a classic free jazz record. Really cool. He was playing with a lady called Heather Lee, and she was playing lap steel guitar. And they released an album called Sparrow Nights last year, so it's Peter Brötzmann sax and Heather Lee playing lap steel guitar. Really interesting record. I should pick that up because I quite enjoy it. They were doing some really weird, interesting things. I really enjoyed that show. That was a good one. I talked about this one before, I think. Surprisingly, I saw Nas play opening for Kanye West 7 or 8 years ago. At the time, I was way more interested in Kanye West than I was in Nas, but there was a guy next to me I didn't know who was there to see Nas only. But that was a cool one. I don't remember it being particularly memorable, but it's just kind of a cool thing. This was one that when I saw them live, they blew me away. This is Sleep, Dope Smoker. You tell I haven't opened that very often. This is Sleep. We're playing at part of a festival, and I got to see a double hit of Lightning Bolt and Sleep back to back. And they absolutely blew my mind. I didn't really understand Dope Smoker until I saw this perform live, and it completely all made sense to me. Just absolutely pounding grinding, repetitive, just slow, and just a monster of a record. Um, it was one of those things where I saw those two back to back, and I was just so blown away that I walked away into a haze, and I went over the road to a different venue where I knew the Breeders were playing, and I remember walking into seeing the Breeders, and I just felt so like disappointed, or I just felt it was so average in compared to what I'd just seen. But that's not me taking anything away from the band. It was just like, that emotional high of when you see a legend, something that's absolutely blown you away. I just walked into the Breeders and I was like, oh, this is just not, I just really remembering that feeling of it being one of the best things you've seen live. I'm pulling out Wish because I don't show this album very often. This is The Cure's Wish. I saw The Cure play at the Sydney Opera House about 10 years ago. No, it wouldn't be like that. 8 years ago. And they played the first 3 albums in their entirety, and all with the original band members who played in those 3 at the time. So to hear like Faith live was amazing, and to hear just those tracks in their entirety, to the point where they played a whole bunch of stuff that you would never hear, like the what's it called, the Weedy Button or Burton, whatever it's called, from the first one, and Fire in Cairo. I guess they played that a lot, but that was a really special experience, and it felt like a really special event, especially to fly up to the Sydney Opera House and see a gig there as well. That was really cool. Probably something I'll never top. And then they played a whole bunch of cool B-sides like Charlotte Sometimes, stuff like that. That was really special. I saw Sigur Rós twice in 1 year. This is their first record from the year 2000. For me, it's tied with Tack as being my favorite. I think this is an original pressing or something. I don't know. Anyway, I saw them at Madison Square Garden with Tali. We went together while we were in New York, and in front of us were these 3 or 4 kids that looked like they were sort of like from some sort of rich university college, in like pastel polo shirts, and one of them had like a cardigan over his neck, and there was like 2 of them and a couple, and they just talked throughout the whole thing, and no idea of the music or no interest, and they clearly they'd been given free tickets, or they were just looking for something to do, and they were there, and I just remember them like, you can't pick a worse gig to talk through, and just for that music, and that was disappointing, but it didn't take away too much from the show, which I really enjoyed. And then they played again later in the year, so we saw them again, and that was really magnificent. But it's just a cool story to say that I've seen a band at Madison Square Garden, for me anyway. It's going to be a long video. We're not even scratching the surface. This is part of this video is part of me an excuse to show records I haven't talked about in a long time. This is Mark Kozelek, Lost Verses. So 2006, something like that. So this was basically from about the time when I saw him live the first time around. Just before, if you're a fan of Sun Kil Moon and Mark, I saw him just before Among the Leaves came out, which was where he first started to venture into that sort of like really quick, the way he sort of speaks in that really wordy style. So I actually got to hear a really interesting crossover tracks. I remember he made a recording of the album, which got put out, and it's called Live at the Phoenix in Melbourne. And I can hear myself laughing in the recording, like it must have been some joke about something, and I was and I can hear, when I listen to it, I can hear myself, which is kind of a cool little story. But he played a really wonderful show, playing Red House Painters stuff, which he doesn't do anymore, and a whole bunch of stuff from Admiral Fell Promises, and I just remember this really beautiful version of Mistress. I think he played River and Mistress back to back, and that was really something special. For me, it was my favorite, the best time I've seen him play live. I then saw him again a few years later when he was really into his sort of like spoken word, over the top thing with the drummer from Sonic Youth. That was pretty cool. But yeah, that was just a really memorable show because it was a tiny venue, and I just got to hear a lot more of a singing style mark rather than a spoken word style. I went to a festival I've talked about a few times before where I got to see back to back Godspeed You Black Emperor, Swans, and My Bloody Valentine. So I'm going to show this one just because I remember they came on at about 7 p.m., these guys, and the crowd were really noisy and people had a few to drink. It was getting towards the end of the day. I guess it was quite a big space. There was quite a lot of noise. And just before they came on, these weird sort of like beeping tones started coming out of the speakers, first quite quietly, then quite loud. And then they would go on and off, on and off. And there were certain tones when they weren't musical tones, they were just like electronic like bursts of sound, and some of them basically sort of cut out your hearing so you couldn't hear what anybody else was saying. It wasn't like invasive, but it was a certain tone where it sort of just made you deaf for like a split second. And they started for about 5 minutes, they just played these tones over and over again, and they sort of like made the crowd quieten down a bit just by softening these tones. And it was this really weird thing where by using, I guess certain tones or sounds, they managed to get the crowd into this really quiet, relaxed, subdued mode. And the band came on and they played, and that was really cool. But I just remember specifically how I thought it was very clever that they almost did like a crowd control before they started, using these really interesting tones. That's that one. We'll go back into some jazz. Gary Bartz, I went with Champ Sound. Andrew used to make videos. I remember it was the middle of winter for the Melbourne Jazz Festival, and it was freezing cold. It was a Friday night. I had a really busy week. I finished work. I met Andrew for some dinner. We went to go see Gary Bartz, and I got into the venue, and it was all seated. It was like a auditorium, I guess, so the acoustics were amazing. The seats were comfortable. It was nice and warm. And I fell asleep for about 20 minutes of the show after seeing Gary Bartz. So that's my story of seeing Gary Bartz, which was I saw a lot of it, but I remember thinking to myself, who in the whole world would fall asleep watching Gary Bartz play? And we were right near the front too, so I'm sure at least some of the band would have seen me there sitting at the front with my eyes closed. Fire, She Sleeps. This was their I think it's the last Fire album, but Fire Orchestra have put out 2 other ones. I got it signed by Mats and the band, which was really cool. I tell the story to quite a few people because I think it's quite funny. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Mats Gustafsson, the saxophone player. We went to the venue and I could see that I was at the top of the staircase and we were heading down. I was with Christian and Andrew. And I was heading up and he was heading down, and I thought to myself, okay, this is the moment that I should introduce, say something, or, say I'm a big fan. Like, what do you say in those sort of situations? And I happened to be holding a copy of the record in my hand. And I just sort of said to him, is this any good? Like, for some reason, that was the first thing that came around in my hand. I think we made eye contact and I said, is this any good? Which was like the weirdest thing to say to someone that just put out a new album. Like, it's his record, of course it would be good, I don't know. It's just a combination of nerves. Fortunately, he thought it was quite funny that I would say something like that, and we had a bit of a chat. But I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. Of course, he's going to vouch for his own new record. Of course, it's not going to be bad. I didn't see Sun Ra himself. But I saw the Sun Ra Orchestra, which had Marshall Allen and I had a complete mind blank. I'm pretty sure John Gilmore was in it, and that show, like, I would say musically it wasn't memorable and mind blowing, but I just remember hanging out with Fred, Big Star 1000, and Anthony and Christian, and just having a really good time hanging out with those guys. So I associate that gig with the feeling of hanging out with Vinyl Community guys, and just it's like a fond memory, I suppose, in my head of a really good night. So yeah, that was really cool. think I've picked out too many. As I mentioned before, My Bloody Valentine. Yes, that was when I saw them. It was Swans, Godspeed, My Bloody Valentine. Now, when I saw these guys, it was like when I think it was like basically the first time they reformed since they originally broke up, and their first show was in Australia for some reason. So I didn't know what to expect, and obviously there's so much legend and production value with this. I had no idea, and I remember seeing them. It was just so strange to see them live because all that mystery and all that sort of stories behind these albums just sort of got stripped away, and you ended up seeing a rock band with lots of effects pedals, and it was really enjoyable but really different to what I expected. I kind of wanted to have like this really big wall of sound, lost in a hazy sort of disorientating effect, but really you just see these with smoke and stuff, but there was no smoke. It was just the band playing, and like I really enjoyed it, but they were definitely a lot more. It sounded more like their earlier stuff, which was really cool. It was really good to see them. Manuel Gotcha, someone that I never thought I would ever see in a million years. Anthony and I went to go see him play in Melbourne. A very weird show, a really weird venue. Again, in the middle of winter, freezing cold, and he didn't play anything off E2, E4, which was kind of strange, but just someone that you would never think to be able to see live. If you don't know this guy, German early electronic experimental artist, check him out. Fleetwood Mac, yeah, I suppose this is not really a unsurprising one, but I had a really magical night seeing these guys. Tally and I were sort of first going out, and we decided to road trip for about, it was probably about an 8-hour, maybe 9-hour drive down to see these guys. They were playing in New Plymouth, and they're playing this place called the Brooklands Bowl, and it's like a natural amphitheater basically, and there's like a whole green park that you can walk through, and we got there and we got a tent, camped. We were both quite young, and we walked through this like really big green. It's not quite a forest, but there's a whole bush section. They put all these lights in it, and it started raining, and I just remember seeing Fleetwood Mac in the pouring rain, and I have vivid memories of them playing Gold Dust Woman, with Stevie Nicks sort of dancing around with all this rain and these lights, gold lights behind her in the rain, and just a very memorable show. And I'm being really impressed by the way they could play, especially Lindsey Buckingham. I thought he absolutely blew me away. So, yeah, that was basically everybody was in the band at that point, apart from Christine McVie. But of course, these days she's back in and Lindsey Buckingham's out, so they never seem to be all together for a long amount of time, anyway. Pharoah Sanders, I saw Pharoah Sanders a few years ago, and he was a little bit underwhelming, I would say. He's obviously getting on with age, but I was really honoured. I'm really glad I saw him play. I remember him doing a Namer by John Coltrane, and it was really amazing to hear that live. He had to keep going off for periods of time while he was playing. But to say I've seen Pharoah Sanders is an amazing thing, which I'm really grateful for. So I don't mean to be like saying how bad these artists are or anything like that. It's amazing that I've seen these people, and it was completely what I expected. So I wasn't disappointed, but it wasn't what it would have been in 1977, for example. The Fall Live at the Wits Trials. This is I was lucky enough to see them about 4 years ago, and they were absolutely tight, punchy. The four just made sense when I saw them live. It was a bit of a revelation seeing them. I just couldn't believe how well the band could play at this point. So I don't know what album came out at that time. I think it would have been I can't remember. There's that many. I can't remember. Anyway, yeah, just really honoured to see Marky Smith live. Especially now he's passed away. Really cool. Just one of those absolutely tight, punchy post-punk. They just knew what they were doing, rattling your bones really live. I was right in the front, and I remember making eye contact with Mark, and he was just scary as hell. He was walking around and just fucking with everyone else's instruments. Like there was a keyboard, and he was putting his hand on it, putting his strings on the bass, and he was in really fine form. exactly what I thought it would be like, and way more. Again, I walked away. It was a really hot, sticky night in summer. I remember I was drenched in sweat and just I was a fan before, but I wasn't a massive fan, and I'm glad I went because I almost didn't go. It was a Sunday evening, and I just had a new appreciation for the band, and it all made sense when I saw them live. Now, I've saved the best story for last because I don't think I've ever talked about it on the channel, because it's kind of a guilty pleasure and kind of embarrassing. I went to a festival in Melbourne called Soundwave, which was sort of a metal and heavy rock thing that ran for a few years. I got to see people like the Melvins and Slayer and a whole bunch of stuff that I can't think of right now. Rage Against the Machine, possibly, or was that something else? All stuff like that. And one year the headline act was Iron Maiden, and I chose to go see the band Third Eye Blind over Iron Maiden because I was a fan from my teenage years. So I kind of regret that because they were really bad. I mean, okay, so there's more to this story because they were playing a sideshow a few days earlier up the road from where we lived in Melbourne, and I dragged Tali along to see them, and they were just really bad, and they were not good. And the worst part is on the weekend I went to go see them again, and I chose to go see them over Iron Maiden, who had the whole setup. They had the whole, what's his face called, the man, the mascot, the pyrotechnics, like it was a full stage thing, and I went to go to this small room and saw Third Eye Blind play the same songs I saw them play 4 days ago. And they were a bit better, but they're still not great. And the worst part is I remember catching a glow stick, and I wasn't even young. I was like 21, something like that. So as a guilty pleasure, I don't think I've ever shown these before. I actually have all three Third Eye Blind, the first three records, because when I was a teenager, there were those lyrics are now so cringeworthy. I guess seem so deep and meaningful to me. So. Yeah, Third Eye Blind, that's my guilty pleasure weak spot. Now you know. So if you stuck it out to the end, that's why it's totally worth it for me to talk about those. There we go. So yeah, that was fun. I sort of went through a couple of stories of bands I've seen live. Seeing all these together like this makes me realize that I was very lucky to see some of these artists. And that is sort of a side effect, I guess, of living in Melbourne that has a lot of people coming through. People I'll probably never get to see again. Great cover. So what I will do is I'll leave a link to the two videos I've seen before because I think they were done really well. I just like to hear people's stories about their gigs and what they've seen. And hopefully this inspires other people to make similar videos because it's just nice not to be talking about music specifically.